You say it's something coming.
Test, test.
Although it's not really a vote, it's just an appoint, so you can also just be like, it's Lucy. Just that idea.
Should we just start with that?
For 2 minutes, 2 more minutes. You guys are always sitting right in front of me. You're right in my eye.
Oh, thanks, Jessica.
Show of support. You guys just have to help me with all the rules. We will. It's a pretty light agenda, so. Yeah.
Careful.
And then, yeah, we'll have 2 meetings in October. But reminder, it's that quarterly start, so. Hopefully we'll get to see you guys sometimes. Nice to have the 2, because I feel like it's a really long time in between our monthly meetings, but you kind of get out of like the habits and everything. So it's almost easier to have it twice a month and just be like in a routine. I always forget where you guys like to sit on the dais. So if we do it twice a month, maybe I'll.
Oh, please.
That's for you, yes.
That's for me. I had it down pat with the old commission, and then
I don't
terms
care.
expire.
I mean, I think you've got bigger things to worry
Maybe you're
about
just
than
less
that.
picky than the first commission. Okay, our chair has arrived. You're off the hook for
I'm
now.
just kidding.
Hi, everyone. Sorry.
You're good. Can you hear us okay?
Yep, I can hear you. You can hear me?
Okay. Yeah, we can hear you.
Are we good, Heather?
Yeah, you ready
I-
to do it? Oh,
Yep.
Commissioner Abler's on. You ready to go? Okay.
Okay, now, yeah, we've got quorum plus just a tiny in-person.
Okay,
group.
mine is on. You go too? Okay. we're-
Okay, Jesse, we're all ready.
All right, awesome. Let me pull up the agenda. I saw Mike Shelton in the airport. He was heading to Seattle, and we were in security together. So he told me he might be a little late. He hasn't joined.
He's here.
Yeah, he's here.
Oh, there he is. Yep, I see him. Mike, you made it to Seattle. All right, we'll call to order the working session for the September 7th, 2022 Cottonwood Heights Planning Commission. Session will go over the business meeting agenda and discuss any additional items. Tonight, the project CUP 2210, which is a public hearing on the conditional use permit for block builders on Highland. And then we have project CUP 2213 for a possible action, a public hearing, and to take possible action on the request to replace 3 existing traffic calming gates with crash gates at in the I'm going to say it wrong, Giverny.
Yeah, your name.
Procedural determination pertaining to the request to construct an 8-foot fence on the property located at 7275 Caladora Cove. Are there any other additional items that we want to discuss in this working session that's not on the agenda?
No, it should just be those 3.
All right. And so we have Commissioner Ebler, Commissioner Shelton, and Zoom, and then we have Commissioner Anderson and Commissioner Chapel. I
Yep.
can, okay.
Yeah, and Commissioner Allen, your audio is cutting out slightly, just so you're aware. We'll keep you posted, but you may want to turn off your video if it gives you more bandwidth. I don't know if that'll help.
Okay, I'll give that a try. All right, well, let's jump into the first agenda item.
Okay, great. I'm going to take that one. Let me make sure my mic is on. So let's walk you guys through a few slides here for this project. Let's see. what buttons are working here. Okay, so CUP 22010, this project is on Highland Drive. We can see here on the vicinity map, it's that blue square there on Highland Drive. It's 6826 South Highland. The action requested tonight is a conditional use permit to operate a professional office within an existing building on this lot. Our applicant is Range Architecture on behalf of Block Builders LLC, and staff is recommending approval with some added conditions, and we'll walk through
Can I
all of that.
jump in real quick?
Yeah.
There are a lot of people here in the work session. I just want to clarify from 5 to 6, it's just a working session between commission and staff. 6 o'clock, we'll go over into the chambers and have the public hearing.
That's great clarification. So just a little bit about this proposal. I've highlighted the property here in blue, just to kind of give you another view of the existing building there on site. The office space would be professional office space for Block Builders LLC, which is a general contracting company. They specialize in out-of-state commercial and retail builds. They're proposing to just utilize the building that's there at this time. You know, down the road, they can amend their project and come back if they want to propose something different. But this proposal is to utilize that existing space. This building has been vacant for a few years. It was a home for individuals with disabilities until about 2015, and then a pharmacy for a few years until about 2017. At least that's what's indicated by records. So been vacant for a while. They plan to do kind of a tenant improvement or a renovation of the interior of the building to make it functional for office space, and do a few cosmetic changes to the building's exterior and landscaping. And we'll talk a bit more about all of these things, but this is just kind of the high level overview. The office would function from 8 to 6, Monday through Friday. It will just be office space for 6 employees of the company for their accounting and estimating purposes. So there's no clients actually visiting the site. This would just be internal space for their team. And then it's also administrative space only. So there aren't going to be any, or the proposal does not include a request for approval of any construction materials, vehicle, or equipment to be stored on site. They apparently have some sister facilities in South Salt Lake and also in Texas that can house these sort of more like large equipment pieces that are sometimes a concern for neighbors of the property. So the proposal tonight is just for that administrative space for their team to use. In terms of zoning, the proposed use is allowed in the residential office zone. You'll notice in your staff report, there are some square footage maximums that are required. It can't be an office past, I believe, 5,000 square feet. This building falls under that threshold, so there's no concern there. But it is a conditional use, which is why it's here tonight for your review. In terms of parking, the city's parking ordinance works on sort of a ratio system based on square footage. So for this building, 7 stalls are required. The existing site has 3 stalls, and those are shown in the blue color. Yeah, I think both screens are showing it accurately. So 1, 2, and 3 on this map are existing there today. One of those stalls is an ADA stall. And then they're proposing to add 4 stalls up front to meet that 7 stall threshold. Just 1 ADA stall is required, so they don't need to add a second one for this ratio. We have included a recommended condition of approval that the applicant just coordinate with our Public Works Department to confirm that the parking layout and design meets city specs for lot or layout specifications, stall width, stall length, turnaround radius, all of those details. As far as other development standards go, the building was built in the 50s, so it's got some legal non-conforming setbacks. There's no proposed expansion to the building. They're not proposing to do an addition or anything. So there's no increase to non-conformity by this application, but obviously it was built well before the city incorporated, so under a different set of standards in 1954. The lot coverage for the zone and the height for the zone are not exceeded. There's no increase proposed to either of those. And both are below, in terms of height, well below the maximum that's allowed in the zone. As far as the architectural and landscaping alterations go, they are planning to, in addition to that interior renovation to the office space, they're planning to do some just cosmetic upgrades to the building, not structural items, but paint, new roof shingles, a new door, and some updated landscaping. So this applicant will need to go to the Architectural Review Commission for their full review. These items and their details and sort of design specifications will fall underneath the ARC's purview. But for your purposes tonight of looking at the conditional use and that use component, the percentage of landscaping that's required has been allocated. The buffers that exist today have been preserved. So we did want to make that note in your staff report tonight. But those design details would be reviewed by the ARC if this application moves forward. We have not received any public comment on this project to date. It will be on tonight's agenda for a public hearing. So if anybody in the audience would like to comment on the project, you can do that in the 6 o'clock to, well, I don't know when it'll end, but 6 o'clock meeting during the public hearing. We are recommending approval of this project. Our full findings of fact are in the staff report. We've just included a few conditions here. Condition that it goes to the ARC, just kind of spelling that out, have the Architectural Review Commission review the aesthetic details. The applicant must obtain a building permit for any reconstruction that requires that permit level review. Applicant must receive approval from the Public Works Department for those parking lot and any other civil specifications of the site. And then we just also included a recommended condition of approval here that if a trash enclosure is ever added to the property, it needs to meet all the screening and proximity requirements outlined in the zone. So those conditions are here. We've got our model motions obviously for the next meeting. And I think that's all of the slides. So any questions from the commission online or in person?
My only question was about parking. When I drove by and looked at it, it was hard for me to kind of envision it.
Yes.
Envision the parking. So that's
Let's
good
go back
that
to
that's.
Yeah,
So is 1, 2, and 3, wait, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Where's Highland?
so Highland is out here to the
I
right.
forgot my glasses.
So let's see, my cursor is tracking. Yeah, so Highland's out here.
Okay.
So the existing stalls are over here, and it is difficult to see when you first drive by, just the way the site is laid out. It's sort of hidden a little bit. So it's difficult to see if you're not looking from an aerial perspective. But they're proposing to add their 4 here. This is a landscape buffer that's required for parking areas that are adjacent to public rights of way. So that would be preserved there. And then we just have that recommended condition that they work with Public Works to make sure that the design and the measurements check out. But from a planning and zoning perspective, the number is provided for 7 stalls.
And that there's a big garage.
Yes.
That's remaining.
Yeah, let's go back here. So there's that existing garage on site. No proposed change to it. It's a non-conforming building today based on the setbacks it was built with, but with this site's development more than 50 years before the city incorporated, it's kind of one of those properties that just has some non-conformities. If the applicant were to ever propose expanding the buildings, they would have to go through the expansion of the non-conforming use process with our appeals hearing officer. Or if they propose to redevelop the site, it'll need to meet current standard for setbacks. And
I think it'd be great. I mean, it's
been vacant for a while.
Yeah, and it looks like it's been vacant for a while.
The owner, the recent owner and potential tenant has, a lot of desire to make it look a little bit more polished and do some upkeep and little TLC to the site. So that will hopefully be something everyone enjoys. But any questions from commissioners who are joining us through Zoom?
With the parking, it seems like those stalls off of Highland are going to be difficult. I think stalls 4 and 5, you would pull in forward off of Highland, and then you would have to reverse back onto Highland, which seems they need to add a hammerhead or something to out and then pull out forward onto Highland.
Oh, that's a nice arrow. Yes, you cut out a tiny bit, but I think we got the gist of what you're saying. And that's where staff's recommending the coordination with our Public Works Department, specifically our senior civil engineer, to make sure that all of those distances are provided. The number is kind of what staff looks at for the planning and zoning perspective, but we have communicated with the applicant that there is that level of detail that still needs to be confirmed as far as
But it's also,
address.
it's also not actually Highline
It's the
either.
frontage.
It's a little, it's a frontage
Yeah,
road.
so it's the frontage stretch of Highland. Certainly, we want to make sure that it meets all
Oh, sorry about
safety
that.
factors. I think Commissioner Allen, your point is still valid, that we want to make sure it functions feasibly and it's not creating an issue. But it isn't actually on to that main arterial. It's that frontage piece.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Of course.
Is that drive-through required for any type of fire regulation?
The circle
That
here,
turnaround,
or
yeah.
we haven't put this through the fire department where it's not redevelopment of the whole site. If they do go to construct a new building, they would have to have that go through fire. And then for their business license, they will need to have the fire department sign off on it. So I imagine that the fire inspector at that point can weigh in on their factors. I know that there are options for the fire department, and I will probably butcher the specifications of this, but if a turnaround can't be provided, I think if a hydrant is within a certain distance, they may be able to provide fire safety that way. So that's the point in this process where the fire department will look at it, is that business license level.
Can you mouse over where 4, 5, 6, and 7 are in the
Oh,
area?
yeah, definitely. Do you want this one, Commissioner Ebler, or did you want just an aerial view of the property?
Aerial view, and if you could just mouse over where 4, 5, 6, and 7 are. I think I know where it is, but
It'll be
okay.
right here.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, so the existing buffer that's here will just be shrinking
Parking.
a little bit. It still meets the width standards, which is 10 feet, but it'll be
Okay.
cutting in a little bit to be able to provide those stalls, which I believe need to be 9 feet wide.
Are the cars basically parking kind of front to front?
I believe that's the intention. I think we have the applicant here tonight with us, so certainly the commission can request clarification from them at any point that you see appropriate.
I mean, I guess you just pull forward anyways, or whatnot. Either way. Can you go back to the aerial shot?
Of course. Yeah, is that one what you wanted to see? We've got a
Yeah,
few
so
different
like
versions.
6 and 7 look like they kind of back up to the driveway that goes to the back. So obviously there's a little bit more maneuverability.
Sure.
And then
Sure.
4 and 5, can you go back to the aerial? 4 and 5.
4 and 5 would be kind of coming this way, more toward the north of the site.
Would it all just be asphalt at that point?
I will allow the applicant to clarify that as well. I think they show that in their landscaping plans, but that is something we'll bring to the ARC. So certainly a question we can ask them if you'd like.
Do you have, I don't recall if I saw it or not. Was there a pervious surface calculation or a lot coverage calculation, and are they still within it?
Yeah, so for this zone, it's just structural lot coverage. It wouldn't be the sensitive lands impervious surface lot coverage. 50% is allowed, and they are below that threshold with no structural expansion proposed.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course, thanks for your questions. I think those are all great. Okay, any other feedback or questions before we move on to the next? We're seeing no questions here, Chair Allen.
Jesse, you're unmuted, but we can't hear you, so I'm not sure if you're talking, but I will just go ahead and move on to the next item, if that's all right. No. Okay, the next item is a conditional use application, which is actually an amendment of a previously approved planned unit development, Giverny, at about 9,000 South and Wasatch Boulevard. You can see that there. It's a 162 lot planned unit development that was originally approved by the city's planning commission back in 2015. The application tonight is to amend just a small portion of that original approval as it pertains to the development fencing plan that was approved by the commission years ago. The proposal is to replace 3 existing mechanized traffic calming gates on the north boundary of the development property. So on those street names you see there. These are the streets that connect to the existing public streets directly to the north that interface with the the single family non-PUD development that's been existing well before Giverny existed to the north of the project. So you can see these are the existing traffic calming gates on those connection roads into the northern development between Giverny and I call it the public subdivision because it's got public streets. It's serviced by public roads. I don't know what the formal neighborhood name is, but these gates were installed. They are mechanized. They actually, when you pull up, they retract vertically into the ground after they retract fairly slowly. After quite a long delay, they go down and then cars can pull through. They were approved as a traffic calming mechanism in response to a lot of concern that was raised back in 2014 regarding cut through traffic and traffic flow and safety and things like that. What is still provided for is pedestrian connectivity. It's a little hard to see here, but these are gates right here that are able to be opened and provide pedestrian access between developments. The proposal, and I'll get into why this is being proposed in a second, it's also in your packet, but the proposed replacement is less technical, non-mechanized crash gates, which are essentially locked and accessible only by emergency vehicles in emergency situations. Here's some background. Giverny, the plan unit development was approved in 2015. At this point, it's 90% complete. There's still active construction going on. Much of it has been completed, especially in the northern area. But it is still under development, just very close to the end there, almost all done. The original planning of development contained a fencing plan as part of the approval document, which is why this is considered an amendment to that. And that document showed traffic calming gates that allow access, and they did not show crash gates. So this is a change to that. And again, that was due to substantial public concern regarding cross-access traffic and safety and other issues like that. Helpful background as well is shortly after Giverny was approved, the project was appealed by a number of groups. Those appeals filtered through the appeal process, got consolidated, and ended up with Regal Homes, who developed the property, entering into a private settlement agreement with a group of residents that were appellants on that in that process. One of the terms of that related to these traffic calming gates and included provisions for when you pull up to a gate, it has to take a certain amount of time before it can go all the way down to allow access. I think the idea there was the slower it lowers to let cars through, the better. Since those gates have been installed in 2019, I believe, they've not been super reliable. The operability has been spotty. They malfunction quite a bit and need to be repaired, and the repairs take time. And when that happens, the gates default to the down position, which allow free-flowing traffic, which initiates a ton of calls to the city from Giverny residents and the residents to the north, who are upset that the gates are down again every time it happens. We've dealt with this consistently for the last few years. So the proposal tonight is a proposal by Regal Homes, actually Giverny Master Association, to resolve kind of that ongoing operability issue and a lot of the concerns we hear. Looking at the various impacts of replacing traffic calming gates with locked crash gates, I'll go through kind of the different impacts we've looked at as staff. Emergency vehicle access comes to mind first. Getting fire trucks through developments when there are limited full open access points is critical. The fire department reviewed this proposal. They have no issues with it. There's a fire code requirement for crash gates where they have to be provided mechanisms to open those gates in case of emergency to get through there. So that would be a contingency that's required, is that whatever ends up going here, if this is approved, would be subject to that fire code compliance. But the fire department didn't see any other concerns. Public works and snow removal. The city does not do snow removal in Giverny. It's a private development, so the road is privately owned, privately maintained. It's not a city. It's not part of the city infrastructure. But the stub streets to the north are, you can see them there. They stub into the site, and the city does remove snow on these connecting roads. the first few years or year or two that the gates were in, I think the city operation was to plow up to the end of the public road, let the gate go down, lift up the blade and drive through the development to get back out to Wasatch Boulevard, but they did not provide snow removal within the development. More recently, though, the city snow plows just plow down to the end of the dead end, not the dead end, but the end of the public streets there, and they back out and turn around and go back out, Green Hills Drive or the other streets there. So they don't actually go through the development anymore. That is all to say, Public Works did not see any concerns with the crash gate concept either. It doesn't affect their snow removal operation, doesn't affect road maintenance because the city doesn't maintain the roads within Giverny. Architecture Review Commission, the ARC has to review any plan unit development. They did review the proposed switch to crash gates and approved it. So they have no issues with the design and materials proposed, which you can see here is just a black iron type material. This is actually elsewhere in Giverny, a fire access road, and it would be similar to that. Like I stated, the gates malfunction frequently and require extensive repairs. And every time this happens, it becomes an enforcement process with the city and waiting for parts and waiting for labor. And then one gate will get fixed and another one will go down. And the city gets calls the whole time. Again, from just anecdotally from my experience from residents within Giverny and within the public neighborhood to the north. Gate swinging, the direction the gates swing open, I think that was in a few of the public comments you received. And that's something that we've looked at as well. There's a recommended condition that if approved, the gates will swing inward toward Giverny and not over the public street to resolve the concern of a gate swinging into a public road with on-street parking or anything like that. Pedestrian access, that's proposed to continue unaffected, so pedestrians will still be able to access where they can today. Navigation concerns, this was brought up a few times, delivery trucks and, service providers to residences, the mail carriers and things like that. I believe that if you use GPS or phone navigation, it'll sometimes route you through these connecting streets. Obviously, with a crash gate there, that would change. So the concern is that there'd be a lot of turnarounds in driveways to multi-point turn to go back and turn around. And we do have a recommended condition to help alleviate that I'll talk about in just a minute. And then encroachment into on-street parking areas. This relates to gate swinging. We just would recommend to the commission that if this is approved, the gates are required to swing inward toward the private development. So the Giverny has to manage the parking situation rather than the residents on the public side. With that said, staff is recommending approval of this based on this impact analysis with these 5 conditions. One, that the crash gates open into the private development area and not toward the public road to the north. 2, prior to installation, detailed plans are submitted and approved by the city and importantly, Unified Fire Authority. 3, on-street parking restrictions where the gates do swing open to the Giverny side are properly demarcated through red curb signage or a combination so that there's not a car parked there and in an emergency, the gate can't open because there's a car parked right on the other side. 4, signage shall be installed at the applicant's expense and to the satisfaction of the city on those 3 public access roads that basically say something to the effect of, no through access except for emergency vehicles. That would hopefully help after a couple times and, the visibility of those signs that would help dissuade vehicles from going down those roads and not being able to access through and having to turn around. We are recommending the same condition apply somewhere within the Giverny development as well, so you don't have that problem from the other side. And then 5, while it's a private settlement agreement, we are recommending that the applicant demonstrate that an amendment to that settlement agreement has been signed and agreed upon by all parties agreeing to this change from traffic calming gates to crash gates. And they have the applicant submitted proposed language that we're looking at just to make sure we're okay with it, and then they'll have to go get those signatures. So that's what I have on this. And I want to, a few of the public comments suggested other mitigations like speed bumps and things like that. Just for the commission's consideration, approval tonight would, or at some point in this process, would enable the applicant to install crash gates. Denial would just revert back to what we have today. So there's not, unless the applicant proposes another option, there's not a third option the planning commission can come up with. It's kind of just approval or denial of what's been presented. And I will say from the staff management standpoint, where we've cleared this with the various city services and proposed reasonable conditions that we think will help some of the concerns we've heard. I don't think an alternate solution like speed bumps or allowing even more, unfiltered access between the developments would be, I think would get even more calls for that, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Any questions on this proposal?
The signage, will there be signage on the public, the street that would come up? Will there be signage there saying no parking so people don't park?
So the no parking would be in the Giverny side of the development.
And on the other side?
No, because on the other side, the gates wouldn't swing open there. So as long as it's wide enough for emergency vehicles to get through.
I was just saying so that people don't park in front of the gate.
Oh, right in front of the gate.
Gate on the other
Oh,
side.
just like across the road there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
I mean, because just to keep that open.
Sure. Yeah. It is a public street. We wouldn't allow a car to park sideways in a public street, but that's a good point. If that feels more closed off, people might,
Think that's a new
they
parking
might get
spot.
comfortable with that. Yeah. And that would be an issue.
I know that some of the comments had stated snow removal concerns about piling up snow on the north public area.
Yeah.
What is the current snow removal, I guess, remediation plan for snow on both north and the public sector and then also the private sector?
The private side, I think the applicant could speak to that. I don't know. It's a private operation. And the north, I don't have the full logistical breakdown of it, but was told and double checked with Public Works, they don't utilize the gates today at all. So whatever they do today, they're able to clear snow in front of houses and back out or turn around and get out of those 3 public access roads without going through the Giverny subdivision.
Okay.
Well, yeah, because I had it about snow as well, as when the snowplow goes through there, will it pile up in front of the gate on the non-private?
In the
existing neighborhood, will it pile up in front of around? Because it's almost like a circle. It's not a circle, but I mean, it ends up being kind of like a circle. The snow, I know how the snow plows it ends up. Again, I'm just worried about the gate that it getting blocked by snow and then the fire trucks or.
Well, that would be an issue as well for fire and emergency operations. The city wouldn't intentionally block.
No.
So I think we can, certainly we could add a stipulation that ensures that whatever snow removal clears those gate areas, but I thought there may be a concern from the Public Works standpoint and they said, no.
I would think that if they're not piling snow there currently in front of the gates that exist, their operations would probably be able to continue without piling snow there.
If they go down, who knows if they circulate in or
The
not?
Public Works Director has stated they don't go through the gate at all. today.
What happened is, for a few years, the city got claims submitted that the city snowplows caused damage to the gates and they were trying to get the city to pay for the repairs. So the city stopped going over the gates at all.
I think if they're not going through it today and they're not leaving snow storage in front of the gates that exist today, their operations would be able to continue without either of those things happening with the new gate. But I think it's a very valid concern to make sure that nothing obstructs emergency access through the crash gates if needed. I can't imagine driving a plow personally, so it's hard to picture navigating.
Any other questions on this one? Okay.
I switched to my phone. Can you hear me better now?
So far, yeah.
Okay, good. So no questions on the gates? All right,
Yeah, we talked through a few of them here. I don't know if you
yeah,
present
I
for
was
that.
on.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to item 3 then.
Okay, this one's a little convoluted, so hang with me. This is not, we're not considering any actual application. It's just a matter of procedural clarification. Hopefully the memo made a little bit of sense, but this is a really unique situation. So I'm only going to pull up a context aerial so we have something to look at while I'm talking here. This is in regards, let's see. Should be pulling up soon.
Yeah, it just takes a minute with
There
the
we go.
bigger files of notice.
This is in regards to an application the city received a number of months ago for what we call a fence height extension. And what that is the construction of a fence or a wall on a property that's greater than 6 feet in height. Fences are allowed up to 6 feet without a permit, without any approval. You can just go do that. The city also allows taller fences for various reasons, up to 12 feet, requiring conditional use permits. In the city ordinance, that conditional use authority is delegated to the administrative hearing officer. These are usually looked at as minor applications. So that delegation falls to me as the hearing officer, as the director of the department. And what we do for these normally is we hold an administrative hearing, which is a public hearing, but happens during the day. Other types of applications we approve this way are short-term rentals in the areas they're allowed because they're so strictly regulated. Various, small home business type applications where the impact isn't usually very great. So those are, I look at them as kind of usually minor conditional use permits with relatively little impact are delegated through that administrative hearing process. That is technically, though, a delegation of the Planning Commission's authority to the Community and Economic Development Director through the ordinance is where that authority is given. In this case, though, I am bringing this to the Planning Commission because we have a situation that is not at this point a minor conditional use anymore, and it's got a kind of convoluted background. So I'm proposing, maybe recommending that we take this and the Planning Commission consider this at a future hearing. What we have here is a property. I think it's this one here. Yeah. So this property here submitted a conditional use application to construct an 8-foot fence on the side yard between properties. They went through an administrative hearing. At that hearing, they were asked to provide more clarification on the height, on how they determined the height of the fence and how they were measuring existing grade and how we measure fence heights. So no decision was made at that initial hearing. And subsequent to that, we received a letter from the applicant withdrawing their application saying, we're just going to build a 6-foot fence that doesn't require the conditional use process. So they built an 8-foot fence, which should have required the conditional use process, but they withdrew the application. At which point the city enforcement got involved and said, you built a fence without going through this process. You withdrew your application, you never got approval. Which started the enforcement process. And then this is going to get really confusing. At that time, the next door neighbor submitted an administrative appeal saying that the fence should be considered part of the home and should be subject to the setbacks of the house instead of being able to be installed on the property line. And then on top of that, the person constructing the fence then again resubmitted a conditional use application to build an 8-foot fence, which was already constructed. City did not accept that and said there's pending enforcement. You need to resolve that first. So then the homeowner appealed the city's decision not to accept the application. So then we had 2 concurrent appeals going on for construction of the fence and the city's refusal to accept the application.
Are you following?
I think this is important background if this comes back to you, which again is what I'm recommending. Only one appeal hearing has happened, and it was an appeal of the city's decision to not accept a conditional use application. The other appeal was put on hold by the neighbor, by the appellant, pending the outcome of that process. The city's hearing officer ruled in favor of the property owner, saying the city doesn't have any authority to deny an application from even being made. So the city has to accept an application, which is where we are now. So we have now accepted that application for an 8-foot fence, which again has been constructed already, and it has to go through that conditional use process, where multiple decisions of the director have been appealed at this point. I'm recommending that rather than considering this at an administrative hearing where I again act as the hearing officer, that we instead present this to the planning commission as the city's land use authority at an upcoming meeting where we'll get into the merits of the actual fence height extension itself.
Mike, was the
Yeah, go
enforcement,
ahead.
was the enforcement activity stayed because of the acceptance of the application?
Yeah, they're given an opportunity to correct, and making an application and getting it approved is one potential corrective action. The second appeal is still on hold, and I imagine that would come back regardless of where this goes. But so that's what this is tonight. It's a procedural point of clarification that the commission technically needs to vote on in the business meeting of whether to allow this to continue through the administrative hearing process or to consider it at an upcoming commission meeting as the formal land use authority for the city.
What are the cons against just letting it go through the formal appeals process in totality for all pending things?
Good. I guess the reason is it's been tied up in appeals and at this point, and it's all appeals of my decision. So me continuing to act as the hearing officer, it may be a little cleaner for the planning commission to just hold a formal hearing and do it that way.
And would we be, what would we be hearing? That's not
You'd
the
be
right
hearing an
word.
application for an 8-foot fence.
There's
But
kind
it's
of
hard to build.
criteria.
I mean,
It's a strange retroactive situation of trying to bring it into compliance. There are certain criteria that we look at in an administrative hearing. So that would seemingly be what you would be kind of vetting the application against.
and what about the appeal of the neighbors?
Mhm. They've stated that it's on hold pending the outcome of now this second application process. I would anticipate that if approved, whoever approves it, they will continue with that appeal and it'll go through that process. Their ability to appeal doesn't change whether it's an administrative hearing or a planning commission hearing.
So is there appeal that the placement of the fences on the actual property line and they want to step back from the property line, and that's been put on hold?
I think the appeal was, I'm not fully ready with all the details, but that it should be measured like a structure and should have like an 8 or 12 foot setback rather than be able to be built on the property line. I don't think it is that the fence is over the property line, but that it shouldn't be allowed to even be on the property line.
Did they give any basis in terms of why a fence would be considered a habitable structure?
I don't think that's part of what we're considering tonight, so I'm not going to weigh in on that.
Okay.
What criteria would usually approve or deny in the administrative process for specifically an 8-foot fence?
There's a pretty strict list in there. It's that it's a reasonable solution. It's that it
Unique
creates-
circumstances
yeah,
exist where additional fence height is merited.
Is this currently in the,
privacy concerns are part of it. There's
does it currently meet all those needs?
we haven't reviewed it yet.
You have not, okay.
So we need to get in and do the full review. It just depends on, are we preparing a planning commission staff report as an administrative hearing?
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's specifically whether the planning commission wants to take it up.
Yes,
and
it's up to the commission.
Mhm.
We can do the administrative hearing and follow it through that process, just given the back and forth and the appeals. I would recommend, if the commission's okay with it, that the commission hear this one, just given multiple appeals, one still pending of a decision I made.
You might think of it kind of like how we've historically delineated home business applications. So typically a home business application goes through just the administrative hearing, the daytime noon hearing process. But when it's like a home daycare or a preschool, that generally has kind of more intensive circumstances, I think, with the property that goes through the planning commission. So it could be kind of thought of that way, perhaps, of like a situation which maybe merits that more formal review by you.
So this had they not had withdrawn the original application, this would have come to the planning board originally, correct?
No, I probably would have just gone through that administrative hearing process.
Okay. So why the delineation now between the administrative process and pushing to the planning board? Is this just because of the process?
Yeah, like I said, I am the hearing officer and I've had 2 appeals on this at this point. I think it's a little cleaner and more formal just to have essentially, my decisions taken out of it and send it to the formal land use authority for the city. Just given that this has kind of grown beyond a minor conditional use application.
But if we either, deny the application or make changes or whatever else, it's still subject to appeal and still could come back to you, correct?
It would go to the appeals officer, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, either way, the process is the same.
Just trying to wrap my mind around it.
It's
a
very
lot.
convoluted, but, and again, whatever way the commission wants to go with this, it's fine. We've got a process for both.
Commissioner Evler, I'll just clarify the appeals that have been made go to the appeals hearing officer, who's Paxton Guyman for the city.
Right.
And the administrative hearing officer is Mike as director of our
Okay.
department. So the hearings are all kind of overlapping, but the appeals have gone and would continue to go to Paxton.
Yeah, I mean, one of the benefits, I suppose, of it going before the full planning board and having that decision is that you are going to have a much better body of evidence in the record to make a decision one way or the other.
Yeah, I will say that the staff preparation is very similar. There's
Right.
public record, there's everything. So that side of it will be very similar. It's just the body or person making that final motion changes. And again, the authority is the same on these applications. It's just, again, given the history of appeals here, that would be our recommendation, would be to have the planning commission take it.
Yeah, I mean, the adjudication, before body of your peers just probably is cleaner and versus, any kind of accusation that can be leveled towards the city that it's arbitrary and capricious or whatever
Sure.
else.
Yep. So that's just a quick motion we need from the commission in the business meeting. Would be who takes it. I will actually prepare a model motion because that one might be a little confusing. So I'll have that ready by the time we get there.
Okay.
That's all. That's all we have for the work session.
All right, does anyone have anything else to discuss, or do we have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll see everyone at 6 o'clock in the next room.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes.